Is that a picture of a house you want to have, Tom, or is it one you do have?
Is that what?
That picture behind you, is that your house?
No, that's Lake Tahoe. I'm up at Lake Tahoe right now. No,
Oh, you are?
no, that's actually, we had a huge event last year, and this was out on the deck overlooking Lake
Beautiful.
Tahoe.
Gorgeous, huh?
Yeah, Lake Tahoe. It's we're going to go up there and play golf this weekend, but the high is going to be 39 degrees and clear.
That sounds like New
Low is
Hampshire.
18 size. No, I don't think so. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Well, it looks like it's 9:03. Let's get going. We've got Wally. How are you today?
I'm swell. How are you doing? Thank you.
Hey, doing great.
Yep.
If you could briefly share a little bit about yourself, and then let's get right into our content. How to cure call reluctance in 30 minutes.
30 minutes or less, or your money back. Oh, okay, good. Right? Cool. So my name's, as Tom said, my name is Wally Bressler. I've been in the real estate industry for 25 years now. I've been coaching agents in one form or another for the last 22 years. Got about 45,000 coaching calls, live presentations, and trainings under my belts, and I've been really fortunate to work with amazing agents like Tom Daves and other really impressive folks around the country. I published my first book last year, and I actually just co-authored another book called Six Figure Agents, available on Amazon, how to make your first six figures in real estate. And I live in McKinney, Texas, just north of Dallas. And I think that's good enough. That's enough. So good to have you all here today. And let me see here. So call reluctance. Okay, it's a terminology is actually call reluctance syndrome. And really what it means is that, you have an issue with either getting on the phone to make calls, or when you do get on the phone to make calls, the first sign of objection, you're out the door, like about 44% of the agents out there. Or you can't get in front of a video camera to record content, or you're making a presentation, you don't like to talk about money, you don't like to negotiate on your behalf, something to do with that holds you back from moving the sales process along, whether it's getting on the phone or doing what you need to do on the phone. Got a great look at your house, Denise. Thank you very much. I love the tour. Appreciate that. It was awesome. No problem. I mean, I'm having fun. I was just being silly. I don't worry about it. I'll walk around my house after. We'll give you another tour. So anyway, one of those things, right? And it looks like procrastination. Any procrastinators here? We're gonna wait a second to answer. Okay, great. Any perfectionists here? Procrastinators, perfectionists. Okay, yeah. All right. So those historically are forms of reluctance when it comes to sales or doing things we're not comfortable with. And where they come from has everything to do with how you were raised as a child, believe it or not. You may not know this, but your belief systems, who you think you are, what you can do is fairly well cemented by the time you're 7, and it's pretty much locked in by the time you're 12. And a lot of what happened in your being reared has a lot to do with that. And so I'll just use myself as an example. Tom knows this story, but it's I think it'll help connect the dots for you. So, I was raised in New Hampshire, and I grew up in an Italian family. And I know Tom will appreciate this. He's Italian, but any other Italians in here and exposure to Italian families? So then you know that there's 3 means of communication. You get yelled at, you get hit, and you get food. Okay? And food can be used as a weapon, or it can be used as a reward. So kind of like that in my house. My parents were both raised in New York, Brooklyn and Queens. And they had some pretty tough upbringing themselves. My dad's mom, Mimi, was especially mean and nasty, not a nice woman. So, my parents, and for what it's worth, our parents aren't necessarily bad people. They just aren't good parents, and they don't do it intentionally. But historically, as children, we got from our parents what they got from their parents. And usually you get what they got, you get the complete opposite of what they got, or you get something in the middle. Okay. And so, my parents were pretty strict. They were both, they both smoked. My dad drank. They were both overweight. They both, suffered from anxiety. And so when I was 3, 4, 5, one of my punishments was to be sent to bed without dinner. Okay. And that created a fear of being hungry in me. And I had a binge eating disorder for probably 50 years. And so it was a tough one. I was sexually abused when I was 10. And, back then there was no sexual abuse. There was no child abuse. And my mom never said, hey, if anybody ever touches your body, don't ever touch anybody else's body. Let us know. Started looking at pornography at 11, started having sex at 12. And I was bullied mercilessly until, through high school, but definitely through grammar school. So by the time I was 14, I had zero self-esteem. I did not like myself. I suffered from anxiety, suffered from a lot of shame. And now you wouldn't have known it because I created this persona that I have now to protect myself. So on the outside, I graduated in the top 18% of my class in high school, New Hampshire Defensive Player of the Year for football, lettered in 4 years in football, 2 years in track, went to like one of the top 15 liberal arts colleges in the country. Was making $100,000 a year by the time I was 26. Married, 4 kids. You would have thought that life was grand. While I'm doing this, I'm also addicted to sex and pornography and food and money. Unfaithful to my ex-wife several times. Probably blown about $5 million. And and having issues with money. I was doing some investing work in 5 and 6, and my business partner lied on $15 million worth of mortgages. And so I spent a year in federal prison, not just because of that, but I also wasn't paying attention. I wasn't really doing my job as a shepherd for people that were involved. And so I spent 366 days in federal prison, got out of prison, didn't think anybody would love me because my self-esteem issues were big problems. My top weight was like well over 500 pounds. And even though I lost weight, I really didn't work on any of that. And so I met a woman probably about 6 months after I got out of prison, fell in love with her, very toxic relationship. And, I asked her to marry me. She took an engagement ring from me. She lived in another state. I couldn't get her to move down here to be with me. So I finally broke up with her. And 3 days after I broke up with her, I found out she was actually married the entire time we were together. So she told me she was divorced, but she wasn't. And so for me, that was like the worst of the worst decisions. And so a month later, I decided I was going to kill myself. Now, clearly, I did not fall through with that, but that is the ultimate version of rock bottom. And so what I've learned in repairing myself and becoming the person I want to be is that, if you do not deal with issues that are creating procrastination, perfectionism, low self-esteem, low self-worth, eventually you are going to be forced to, right? We've got our brains are great because their job is our brain's job is to keep us alive, right? Keep us safe. We've got a negativity bias built into us that forces us to look at things that could hurt us, right? That could scare us. So that's great. It keeps us from, well, not all of us, because there's some dumb folks out there. If you've never looked into the Darwin Awards, you need to go look at those, because those are the people who died most spectacularly in the last year by dumb stuff that they did. But the rest of us, we heed that. But while it keeps us alive, it also works against us for doing things that we're not comfortable with. Does that make sense? And so if you had something like sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, if you were bullied, if one of your parents is alcoholics, if your parents got divorced when you were really young, if you went to go leave the house in the morning and your dad said, hey, don't try and do anything good because nothing good happens to the Bressler people. If, one of your parents was a perfectionist, if your parents were super strict, or if, here's a big one right here. If your parents never fought with each other, they never taught you how to deal with, if you grew up at the Brady household or the Leave It to Beaver household, your parents never fought, they didn't do you any favors, because you avoid conflict like the plague, right? Because you never learned how to deal with it, and the first time somebody gave you feedback when you left the house, you're like, hell no, I'm not doing ever doing anything that's going to put me in that position. Or, folks whose parents were so perfect themselves that whenever you did a good job, you were supposed to do a good job. And when you did a bad job, you got hammered, or it happened to a sibling. And so what happens is those instincts trigger the flight portion of our fight or flight instinct. And our brain is like, oh, okay, we're going to avoid anything that creates that pain. And so every time it happens, your brain reinforces, no, 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 no. And then all of a sudden you start attaching other things that are painful and avoiding those things too. Does that make sense? And so while the only way I can hurt you with this is if I threw it at you or if you tried to eat it, the fact of the matter is people don't want to pick up the phone. And it's not because of the phone. It's what's waiting for us on the other side, right? Being judged, being not approved of. In fact, 59% of all salespeople have a very strong need for approval. Okay. suffered with that for 5 decades. Being rejected, not feeling good enough, not being right. So what happens is on the other side is the potential for something bad to make us feel badly. So we're just going to avoid it altogether. Fair? Right? And so bad news is it's not going away on its own. Worst news is it will get worse, and it will continue to get worse because your brain's going to make you deal with it. And here's what happens. One, you're at an event and you go somewhere and you're like, that's it. You go to a conference and you see like all these wealthy, successful real estate agents, and you're like, how did those people, if they can do it, I can do it. You come home, a vision board, color-coded calendar, goals, they planned out. All right, tomorrow, going to the gym, getting up, going to make my calls. First day, I'm tired. I'm just going to sleep in alone, go to the gym, and, those calls can wait until tomorrow. Next day, no gym, no calls. You look at the vision board, and so it happens. You know what I'm saying? Because Rick Carson calls it your gremlin and taming your gremlin. Like this person who's been around since you were 7 or 12 has been pulling you back and saying, no, you can't do this. We're not that, and we go right back to it. Okay. So the good news is that you can reverse that. You can reverse it yourself, and you can do it in pretty short order. Couple things. Number one, if you have call reluctance or any things I've talked about today, it's not your fault. All right. You have had the wiring and coding in your brain since whenever, and you've operated according to that your entire life, just doing what seemed natural, right? Tony Robbins says, don't should all over yourself, right? I should have done this. I should have done that. If you didn't know what to do, you shouldn't have done anything because you didn't know how to fix it, right? So that's part. I'm turning my phone down. Sorry. So that's part of it. The other thing is there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your mind or your brain. It's just that, you got coding on how to deal with something, and that coding was to avoid it at all costs. In fact, Don Turner he's an expert on helping people overcome trauma from when they were a kid. And one of the things he says is that there's no such thing as self-sabotage. It's just our brains running to safety to keep us safe. That's all it is, right? And even good things we're afraid of, right? People are just as afraid of success as they are of failure. So that's why we sometimes when things are good, we're like, oh my God, this is not, oh my God, I'm scared. So I'm just going to blow it up. I'm just going to run away. Okay. But it's not self-sabotage. So Wally, knowing all this, how do you fix this? Great question. I'm glad you asked so much. So there's a 5-step process that I've kind of devised because I had call reluctance for 10 years. Okay. 10 years. And it kept me from getting into the real estate industry for 10 years. I didn't get my license until I was 30. And my first 14 months in the business, I sold 72 houses. So I really missed a great opportunity by having call reluctance. And so, one of my whys is to make sure that nobody ever has to put off success or ever has to hit rock bottom to realize that the changes they could have made were available to them a lot earlier on before things got worse. Fair enough? Right? Because the real estate market's not getting any easier over the next year. I can guarantee you that much. And if you want to have business that turn to the right, Denise is like, right? So if you want to have business in the first quarter, you want to make it to when interest rates are supposed to go down in this third quarter of next year, you got to get there, right? You can't be a bear and hibernate for 9 months and come back and, okay, interest rates are better because you won't have anybody to talk to. So the first part of the process is to become aware, all right? It's like going to the doctor. You don't say, hey, I've got a headache, and the doctor doesn't say, okay, lay down, we're going to operate. It's like, okay, where does it hurt? How long does it hurt? Is it throbbing? Is it internal? Is it external? Ask questions. Let's become aware of where it is. Now, look, you may be a perfectionist or a procrastinator or something and have no clue why you are. I'm going to help you figure out by tomorrow morning. In fact, some of you would probably already know. I guarantee that some of the folks I've been talking to who have got call reluctance or procrastination or perfectionism issues, your brain has been doing its own research while you've been talking, and it's gone back and it's found it because it doesn't go away. Everything you've ever tasted, touched, smelled, heard, or seen is all back there. Unfortunately, it's filed like this, like a sandwich, right? It's a lot easier if it was a filing cabinet. Oh, there it is. So pretty simple. You, when we're done today, take a couple of note cards, or if you're a perfectionist, just take a piece of paper, cut it, whatever. I just want you to write one question down on there, okay? What is it that's causing me to have call reluctance? Or what is it that's causing me to be a procrastinator? Or what is it that's causing me to be a perfectionist or whatever? All three of them, right? And then I want you to keep one of those today and read it throughout the day. I want you to put one on your nightstand. And then tonight, when you go to bed, I want you to look at it. And then tonight, when you go to sleep, your brain's going to do the job that it does. And while you're sleeping. Your subconscious is at work and it's working. It's helping create those chemicals that it needs to replenish for the next day. And it goes and it makes process of everything that happened that day. And it tries to make sense of everything that happens that day, right? Our brains want clarity. Our brains want understanding it. They want consistency. And so when they don't get it, they try and figure it out, and they do a lot of that work at night. Anybody here have trouble going to sleep? Raise your hand if you have trouble going to sleep. Anybody here have trouble staying asleep? Okay, so here's why. Yeah, right. Anybody not sleep at all, right? So here's why. You lay down, you start falling asleep, you get into that REM sleep, and your brain's like, okay, time to get to work. And remember the librarian cart that was like slanted? The librarian put the books on the cart and would walk around the library and put all the books on the shelves. That's what your subconscious is doing. It's like, oh, here's that thought. Here's that thought. Oh, I could never please my mom. Leave that on the floor. Oh, my dad was an alcoholic and he never was able to emotionally pour into me. And it just keeps putting it on the floor. And over time, that piles up, and then the cart starts bumping into it, right? That's your brain saying, oh, we've got something to deal with. And it wakes you up and says, hey, I've been telling you about this. We have to deal with this, right? Now, look, we get a cut, and we would go ahead and, I don't know why I'm looking. We get a cut, we clean it out, we put a Band-Aid on it, we take care of it, right? We get sadness, we get anxiety, we get depression, we get hurt, and we just stuff it back down, okay? When you feel an emotion, and it's a disempowering emotion, or when you're getting woken up in the middle of the night, or if you're not having trouble falling asleep, your brain is trying to tell you that you have got to deal with this. There's something we have to deal with, okay? So by having the card next to your nightstand, you'll be able to figure it out. By tomorrow morning, you'll wake up and you'll go, okay, here's where it comes from, okay? I guarantee, and here's the thing. It happened between the time you were born and the time you were 12. Anything that happened after that just exacerbated what was already there. Is that fair? Like, when COVID hit, a year later, oh, look at all these mental health issues that came about as a result of COVID. No. What it did is COVID basically knocked your foot off the lid of whatever you're holding down and made it worse. Fair enough? By the way, this also applies to people that keep dating the same person, keep going back to the same person, don't learn your lesson, staying with people you shouldn't stay with, people pleasers, all that stuff. It's all the same thing. So number one, we've got to get clear on what the source is. Number two, once we're clear and look at the awareness. Number two, we've got to go ahead and we've got to start feeling the emotions that come up when they come up, because T. Harv Eker calls it TFAR, thoughts, feelings, actions, results. So we get a thought, we get triggered, and then there's an emotion, but a lot of us just skip that emotion, right? If you were like me, sex, money, food, pornography, or alcohol, drugs, cigarette, or doing laundry, sitting on social media, talking with somebody endlessly on the phone, we skip this emotion, we go right to those activities, and then we get a really crappy result. Does that make sense?
So what's number two is deal with your emotions.
Number one is number one is global awareness. Global, right? Number two is situational awareness. I got to figure out what happens when I get triggered, right? So when I get triggered, when that feeling and thought comes up, what I just turned you down, for God's sakes. What do I do? And so here's what happens. If you take the time to realize what those feelings are, they're going to come up and you're going to go, oh, whew, that's anxiety. Ooh, look at that. Where's that anxiety come from? Well, we were poor growing up. My mom and dad would fight with each other over money, and I never felt like I was good enough because we never had the things that other kids had. I grew up poor. Nobody told me I was poor, but my clothes were definitely different than the other kids. We never went on vacation. Tough skins. My winter coat looked like my grandfather's coat. I could tell by my lunches. My lunches were definitely different than other kids. Other kids' parents looked like they were packing for them to go away on a trip for a week. Remember those cowtail candies? It's like licorice, and licorice. It's caramel with something in the middle. Mock, we get cowtails and we don't have enough money. To this day, I'm 55. I've never had a cowtail. I can't bring myself to eat one now. So anyway, stuff like that, right? So that creates these feelings, and unfortunately, we don't want to deal with the feelings, but our brain makes us deal with the feelings. And so I want you to just realize that those feelings are coming up, and then I want you to spend some time on some mindfulness. Mindfulness just means you're focusing on what's happening right now, okay? Right? If I'm thinking about the past and what happened, I experience what? Sadness, depression, anger. If I'm thinking about the future and what could happen, I'm looking at anxiety, fear. Does that make sense? But if I'm focusing on the right now and I'm just in the moment, and if you're somebody who's dealt with anxiety and depression before, and you go out with some friends and you have a good time and drink or two, and you just kind of forget about life for a while, it's like, oh, okay. And that's just you giving your brain a break. But if you can just focus on what's happening now, all those emotions will come out and melt away. The easiest way to do that is to do some box breathing. Everybody familiar with box breathing? Square breathing? Okay, real simple. You close your eyes and then you breathe in for a 4 count. You hold for a 4 count. You let it out for a 4 count, and you hold for a 4 count. Okay, so it's like this. It's 2, 3, 4. Hold. Out. Hold. Right? You just keep doing that, and what happens? That takes you out of fight or flight. All that's happening when you go into procrastination mode, perfectionism mode, is your body's protecting you. Your brain is protecting you from whatever perceived fear it is. In fact, I'm 55, and if there's something that happened when I was 5 or 6, if I get triggered right now, my brain doesn't know the difference between 1972 and 2023. Does that make sense? As far as my brain is concerned, this is little Walter getting the belt from his dad. And by the way, the sound of a leather belt coming out of polyester pants is a very memorable and distinct sound that you'll never forget about, right, Tom Naves? I know you know, right? And so, yeah. And then so you wait till your dad gets home and it's on. So, but that I'm 55, but my brain can go back and associate whatever fear I'm going through now with that. And so we've got to take control of that and not let it happen. So global awareness, why am I doing this? Situational awareness, what feelings am I feeling, and get mindful. Number 3 is you got to rewire your brain. Okay. The best thing you could ever do is to get Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning. Okay. It's a really simple book. He's created a program called Savers. So it's silence, which is meditation, A for affirmations, V for visualization, E for exercise, R for reading, and then S for scribing or journaling. 10 minutes of those, each of those every morning. And what happens is you start rewiring your brain. Right? We say stuff to ourselves we would never say to a kid. Right? You would never tell your kid or another kid they were lazy, they were stupid, or that was dumb, or you're not good at that. You know what I'm saying? You would never do that. And whatever you wouldn't say to a kid, you shouldn't say to yourself. You know what I'm saying? And so what happens is we've got to start changing the way we say things to ourselves, affirmations. We've got to read some good things. If you've never read Brene Brown's Gifts of Imperfection, I highly recommend it because it really talks about how to accept ourselves as we are, where we stand, with nothing to change, because it's who we are. Right? We're here because of the way we were raised, and we did what we thought we needed to do at the time we did it because it was the right thing. Right? But if we're going to go ahead and move forward, we've got to accept that that's how it is, and that no matter how that happened going forward is what we have control over. Okay. So you got to get into changing what goes into your mind. You got to start seeing yourself where you want to be. You got to have I'm good enough the way that I am, and I don't need anybody's approval but my own, like that kind of an affirmation. Because we are good enough just the way we are, right? We can't make anybody like us, right? A man's mind changed against his will is of the same opinion still. And even if we force somebody to like us, do they really like us, right? Okay, so that's step 3. Step 4 is really think about what motivates you. Okay, Daniel Pink, or drives you, but Daniel Pink in his book Drive. There you are. So in his book Drive, what he says is not everybody's motivated by carrot and stick, reward and pain. And what he says is the carrot, which is the reward, if it's too big or if it's too far away, can lose its luster. It can lose its power on us over us to move forward. And the pain, the pain of staying the same, may not be strong enough to overtake the pain of making the change, right? And so those are he calls them extrinsic motivators. We've got to look at intrinsic motivators, and he says there's 3. There's autonomy, which is when I'm living my best life. What does my life look like? Mastery. What do I have to master to make that happen? Everybody's got to master emotional management, and then what's our purpose? So, Cliff Freeman, number 5 in the XP for earnings, calls them the 3 freedoms: time freedom, money freedom, location freedom. Doing what I want, where I want, however I want to do it. not having to worry about having the money to do it. Having been a coach for 22 years and having been selling one-on-one coaching and group coaching since pretty straight through since probably 2006, I can tell you with unerring certainty that just about everybody wants those three things as a real estate agent. Now, there may be other things, but that's usually why people become self-employed. I want control over my time. I want to control where I am, and I want to control how much money I can make, right? But if you do not know what that looks like and you don't know what the things are that you have to master, it's not going to happen. So that mastery component is helpful because you're always having to learn something to get where you are. And then the last one is your why. You got to figure out your why. Man, it's like it's like finding buried treasure for some people. You know what I'm saying? They can't figure out what's my why, what's my why, what's my why. So I'm going to tell you another story, and then I'm going to Tom, can we go a couple minutes longer here?
Yeah, you've got time here. So just to recap, number one, we've got become aware. Number two is situational awareness. And then number three is rewire your brain. Is that correct?
Yep. And then number four is you got to figure out what drives you.
Figure out what drives you.
Right. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And then the last one is you got to figure out what your why is. Great book here called Find Your Why by Simon Sinek.
And what's number five? Let me type these in here now.
Find your why. You got to figure out what your why is.
Okay, got it.
So anyway, if you've got issues that you've not resolved in your life, they will keep you from being able to figure out what you want in life and get excited about the future, because as long as you're looking backwards and running away from pain, you can never look forward to something. Is that fair? So you can imagine going to prison has a huge impact on your children. My son, 19, only boy in the family, was bullied, had a tough time when I was gone. And back in 2017, he tried to kill himself when he was 14. And so that was hard. Obviously, he's doing great now, but it was hard, right? And so when I started this company a few years ago, I asked him to come work with me. And he said, sure. And so I'm like, here's a piece of paper. I want you to write down 10 things that you want in life. And he had a bunch of stuff he had told me about, but he sat there for an hour and couldn't put one thing down on a piece of paper. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why. So I reached out to a friend of mine called Tara Hendrickson, and she's in England, and she's an expert on imposter syndrome. And we sat and talked, and what we figured out was, as long as your brain is focused on avoiding pain and you haven't resolved the things from the past, there's no room to think about things for the future, right? Either you can't see it or you just want to allow yourself to see it. And that's what your why is 100% attached to that. Is that fair? And so if you can't see that, it's hard to have a why. And so your why is comprised of two things, according to Sinek. Number one, it's some sort of pain that you want to avoid or that you want somebody else to avoid. It's something you have to contribute, like you have to change the outcome of it, right? So your kids aren't a why, they're a who. Houses, boats, cars, what's? Vacation when? Retirement when? Right? Those are all things or people. The why is, how am I going to impact the outcome of that? So let's take an example. Anybody hear of a super crappy car when they were growing up? Hated it, always broke down, embarrassed, right? What kind of car did you guys have, Treva?
I had a Dodge Colt tin can.
Nice. So, right? So is having a nice car important to you now?
Within reason, yes.
Yeah, I mean, and it's different for everybody, but thank you for that. But the whole point is, we had crappy cars, and I'm not a super big car guy too, but the whole thing is if you want a really nice car, and there's some people like, I got to drive a BMW, I've got to drive a Mercedes, I want that. And the pain they want to avoid is that they had a shitty car when they were younger and they hated it, and they just didn't want to ever feel like that again, And so it's important to them. And so they'll do whatever they have to do. They'll manage their emotions, they'll prospect, they'll do whatever they have to do to make enough money to own that car, right? That's a why, right? You grew up poor, you don't want your kids to grow up poor, right? Your why is, I'm going to make my calls, I'm going to prospect, I'm going to handle objections, I'm going to do everything I need to do, nurture leads, so that my kids are set up financially for the rest of their life so they don't have to go through what I went through. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's what a why is. In order to tap into that why and let it drive you, you've got to be able to get out of running away from pain mode, get out of procrastination, perfectionism mode, and be able to focus on what you want and then attach that emotion to it, okay? because most of your emotions are used up in fear and avoidance. Okay, so global awareness, where's it coming from? Situational awareness, when it comes up, I got to get present and deal with it. I got to rewire my brain, change what I say to myself, change what's going into my brain. Number 4, what drives me? What's my autonomy? What do I have to learn? What's my purpose? And number 4, what's my why? Why do I need it? Why am I going to get up out of bed and do what I need to do? Why am I going to pick the phone up? Okay. So, that's really the process. Simple, yes. Easy, no. Okay. I do have a course. I'm not selling it here, but I have a course. If you're interested, you can send an email to Wally at triggersalessystems.com. I'm starting another one next week. If you want to make it go away for good and start the new year on a high note and not have next year be the way this year was or the last year or the inconsistency you've had, I will guarantee you that I can help you overcome your issues in 8 weeks. All right. And then that's really how it happened. So, and look, I'm living proof. I'm sitting here coaching you. I've had a lot of great things happen the last several years. 4 years ago, I wanted to shoot myself, and now I'm living a great life and I have great relationships with my children, and I'm helping people get through the same stuff they have. So if I can do it, you can do it for sure. Any questions? Was this helpful? Probably not what you thought it was going to be. You guys are like, oh, he's going to give me some scripts and dialogues, and he's telling me how to manage my time. And, that's the standard, you gotta want it, like, okay, great. No, it's really an emotional issue, for the most part, for most people. It's, us getting in our own way because of something that happened that we really never dealt with. So anyway, if you just want to talk too, here's the other thing. I'm going to give you my calendar link. If you just want to talk, I'm not going to try and sell you anything. And you don't want to take my class, but if you want to talk, a lot of people want to talk and just say, I'm having trouble understanding. I don't know why this happens. How do I get around it? I'll spend a half hour with you, and in 10 minutes, we'll figure it out. Okay. Anybody else? And my calendar link's there. My email, I'll put my email in there too. Wally at triggersalesystem.com. But that's all we got. I mean, it's not all we got, but that's all time we got.
Just wanted to let you know that was great info. Appreciate it very much. And I'm sure we'll be in touch with you shortly.
Cool. Awesome. All right, guys, we appreciate your time. Good luck. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Thanks, Wally.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.